Today we conclude the series on humility, and I'd like to flow with all that has been shared so far. Humility is not something that is easy to come by, and in fact, humility comes through testing. And in the end, every test that God has allowed into our lives has been designed to humble us. It is the road of humility in which we can receive all things in God. Every answer to prayer, every desire that is in line with His perfect will in our life, that was a pattern by which Jesus Himself received everything God has in His life. Because many of you have heard the prophecies and the wonderful things that has been given, and for whoever that person is that Pastor David mentioned that's supposed to come and receive a prophecy from him, I believe you'll be online or perhaps hear this message somewhere, that you know there's a word for you, and the Lord has been prompting you to come and be humble and receive the word, and you have refrained from coming. Perhaps you're from another church, another fellowship, or perhaps you have written to him or emailed to him or sent messages to him. And remember that one of the humbling things is to be able to just be part of the worship, and then in the worship, in God's fullness of time, when there's a time for prophecy, time for certain blessings, then you flow along and you receive. And so you're flowing with God's schedule, rather than you say, God, flow with my schedule. It's part of the humility that God looks for to bless each person. And Pastor David talked about testing and all that, and I said that many people see the rewards of the ministry. They see the blessings of the ministry. They see the financial blessings, provision, the fame, the influence, the call to minister, to gather thousands of people, 10,000s of people, hundreds of thousands, and they see the fame, the glory, and all those things. But there are ministers who seek after that, and they have a form of that to aim only for those things, and it's outward and shallow. But that is genuinely coming from God always comes through humility and testing. And before every answer that God gives is a test. Before every promotion that God gives is a test. And before any reward that God brings is a test. And although you may say grace is free, but grace was expensive. It's paid by the precious blood of Jesus. And it's freely given to us. But to receive it, we need to be able to be tested until we are humble before God, and to able to grow in humility in the Lord. And I say that always in the ministry, we have cried billion tears, and so sometimes when God was seeing suffering, tears that you cry in your private time, tears that you cry in the darkness of your prayer, tears that you cry when you're all alone in God, crying in pain, crying in, when you're persecuted, crying when you're misunderstood, and when you cry the billion tears, and then God rewards you, it is really, it makes it worth it. Makes it worth it. And I would say that, some even say, oh, you're going to be translated and not die. I'll say, it has come with many tears. God has put through tests that people cannot imagine. And so the pain that you bear in your heart, but in the end, God gives you the joy, God gives you the reward. And God answers and says, well, you have passed the test. And the reward comes, it's it's worth it. Like I said, there is a sacrifice before there is a blessing. And but in the end, the cost, there's a cost to sacrifice. But in the end, the cost of not sacrificing is actually greater. The cost of not paying the price is actually greater. Because the consequences of our life, our actions, and everything that we have done, it is more costly to disobey God in the end. Even though it costs something to obey God. And in the end, no one escapes the price and the cost and the sacrifice. Either you pay the price now and receive the reward in this life and in eternity, or you're going to try and enjoy this life and don't pay any cost. You'll be paying the cost for all eternity. And 10,000 years from now and a million years from now, we will look at those who didn't pay the price and those who paid the price, and then you really realize that the price you pay is so little, so minute, like a drop in the ocean, compared to the price that you pay for all eternity for not paying the price now. So I hope that motivates us to be willing to pay the price, to be willing to pass every test that God gives, even if it's painful, even if it's costly. With that in mind, we want to look at concluding this humility series in the first service and the second service, and encourage us to pursue humility because it is the way of Jesus, is the way of Christ. Any true follower of Jesus Christ will have to take this road. Any superficial follower of Jesus will be taking a different route. And in the end, they will pay a greater price than the price that humility offers. And especially in this concluding two-part series that we're teaching today, we want to emphasize on how to grow in humility and how to allow humility to cause us to increase, how to increase in our life, and how to humble ourselves even more and more in God. And of course they involve tests. So let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 8, taking the theme from that. In Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 3. The Lord says this is a route in which He takes us. And through the wilderness. And you know how long God was trying to humble the people? 40 years. 40 years. And in chapter 8 verse 2 it says, and you shall remember, and this is the new generation. And it says, you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness. Their fathers have died, and the children who were in the wilderness have grown up to be adults now, ready. I would say they were the second generation, ready to go into the promised land. And thank God, in the time of Joshua, they made some mistakes. Like they signed the treaty with the Gibeonites, and there was still sin in their midst, like the sin of Achan. And then they were overconfident in themselves. They do make some mistakes, but thankfully their mistakes are not the same mistakes of those generation of their fathers who came out of Egypt. Because at least to a certain extent they had more humility. I won't say they have absolute humility, but at least they have more humility. And how come they succeed more than the fathers before that? Because they've been through 40 years of a humbling process. They were little children when they came up. And they have lived in the wilderness for 40 years. And there are people like Caleb and Joshua who were adults, and their time of blessing was prolonged because of everybody else. Yet it was no problem to go through the wilderness. And it says in verse 2 that for 40 years brought you through the wilderness, God says, to humble you and test you. There are several tests that God will put you through to see whether you got humility. And we'll talk about some of those tests afterwards. And to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep His commandments or not. And so we can call it, this is the first test of humility. You know, when people claim that they know something, or they've studied, or they've acquired a skill, after that is the test. Not all tests are theoretical. If you study to be a doctor, the test has to be actually partly practical too. That's why they have internship and all those things. And if you're studying in engineering or some other fields, the test is actually a practical thing. If you're studying music, in the end you have to do a performance. You have to actually play the instrument with skill. And so not all tests are cerebral or intellectual or sitting down on a desk and a table. They are practical tests. And so there are tests for humility. One of the first tests is the wilderness test, to see whether we are humble. And this is one of the first tests of humility. And it lasted for 40 years. And there are several people who had the wilderness test. Jesus Himself went through it. So when you go through the wilderness test, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong in your life. It's just a road that God wants to bring us through. Everyone will have a wilderness. And your wilderness need not be without water, without food. Because if you have a deep relationship with God, God will provide the water, God will provide the food, the manna, God will provide the quails. God will provide everything. But outwardly, it's still a wilderness. That means that at any point your relationship with God fail, you will end up without water, without food. And your dependence on the relationship with God is so important in the wilderness. That's the first test that every one of us will have to go through, the wilderness test. And there are probably about 5 tests, if we have time to cover all of them, of humility. But as we look at this test, I'd like to give some possible scriptures for us to encourage us and to be able to motivate us to a certain extent. You all remember, and here in Australia we don't have that much 7-Eleven except some of the big cities. So you always remember 7-Eleven. Well, and then you also remember since the bombing of World Trade Center, many people remember 9/11. Well, look at Ecclesiastes 9:11. And so I hope that so that you do not forget this scripture, and forgive me those who have gone through suffering because of 9/11, and we have empathy and compassion and prayer with those lives who were affected and loved ones died, and our prayers and love is with you. But it is good. It's good that in all of our life that we always remember 9/11, because it will challenge everything that you learn in your studies and all your training in life. In this life that you see, when you look at what's happening in this life, you think that some people do well because they are more talented. Some people do well or got rich because they have various giftings, or they're wiser, they're smarter, they're stronger, they're more powerful, they're more influential. Every time your thoughts stray towards that, remember 9/11. 9/11. So every time now when you study and all those things, you think, wow, because of your wisdom, I want to be a smarter person, then you will do well. Remember 9/11. When you go out and you begin to get jealous at people because they are more famous, got more money, they got more blessed, remember 9/11. Ecclesiastes 9:11. What does it say? And here's the Ecclesiastes Solomon, who after been through everywhere now, no one could have enjoyed life, this life, more than Solomon has the opportunity. When you talk about fame, he was possibly more famous than any famous person today. If you talk about money, he is richer than the richest man on earth today. When you talk about physical pleasures of life, he had more opportunities than any human. And you talk about women or the lust of the flesh, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He had 1,000 women. Yet nothing can satisfy his heart. So you talk about a man who could have been given to eat, drink, and have pleasure all his life. At the end of his life, he realized, and the key words in his life was vanity of vanities. All is in vain. Nothing satisfies. And only God can satisfy. Because all these things in this life, Peter describes it as a vapor or smoke. And it disappears. All the pleasures this life can give you, all the good things this life can give you, and by the way, even all the fame this world can give you. I know pastors who because they think they're famous, they can do and think anything they like, and they can dictate the doctrine that the world will be influenced by today. No, the doctrine will be influenced by the written word. Because anything that is not of the truth will eventually die. Even if the generation that believes the lie has to die first before the false truth disappears, so be it. In the end, the truth prevails. And truth will slowly grow forth and be all consuming. Because only truth lasts the tide and time of life. All the oceans of the times will wash away all errors in the end. And nothing lasts but truth. Now, this is truth. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. That contradicts every history book. Nor bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill, but time and chance happen to them all. Now Solomon has one observation, but he didn't give the full solution. He observed thousands, millions of people, and he was very wise and deep, logical, and analytical. He observed that he's not the wisest person, not the smartest person, not the strongest person. He observed individuals, he observed communities, he observed nations. He himself being ruler of a nation. He realized that 9/11, everything crashes down. And in fact, how is this world determined? How is life really determined? Jesus gives a solution that Daniel say in this way. And let's read Daniel before we quote Jesus. Let's look at the book of Daniel. Now, 9/11 is answered by Daniel chapter 2:21. That one I couldn't find anything to help you remember. So 2:21. So 9/11, remember by 2:21. That is, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are His. Everything belongs to Him. And He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. In other words, everything comes from God. Pontius Pilate was told that by Jesus, you have no power except what is given to you from heaven. Nothing that we receive in this life, whether your talent, whether your wisdom, whether your life, whether your riches, even whether your fame. And so hear these words. All those who are famous today, God allowed you your fame. Use it wisely. Hear these words, all who are rich on the earth. Use your riches well for God and His kingdom, for to do good and help mankind, for they have been a gift to you. You're wise and talented, hear the word of the Lord. Your wisdom and intelligence and skill came from a gift from God. Use it for God and not for yourself. So when we acknowledge, like we saw last week, they're all good gifts, and every good gift, everything that can produce some goodness on this earth, came from God. Humility begins. At least the road, you're on the right road to humility. And Jesus summarizes in a way of saying, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The earth is yours. But there's only one primary key: humility. And we read the last week that before riches and honor is humility. Before riches and honor is humility. Did Joshua experience humility? Joshua chapter 1 tells you he was Moses' servant. And in talking about the 5 different tests of humility, and I might go through the tests in the second service, but in this first service, I've introduced just one. And the whole key for you to remember, for us to remember, is to learn to be a servant. Servanthood is the key to learning how to be humble. Joshua has that. Moses has to learn that after he was brought up as a prince. You know, Egypt could use him as a soldier, as a warrior, but God cannot use him until he learned the wilderness road of humility. We are no good to God, even if you're good to the world. You're no good to God unless you're humble. And to cement that, I'd like to read some more scriptures in the book of Proverbs chapter 16. And some of you will find verses here that you can take and apply to many other areas, because there are many promises here in Proverbs 16. And I like to read the whole chapter because there are verses there that some of you can take and apply in your life. And it also inspires you to realize that the Word has an answer for every situation. So, Proverbs chapter 16, if you please, I'm reading from the New King James. The preparations of the heart belong to man. Pastor David talks about the soul. Do you know that the perfecting of the soul right now also depends on you? Your yieldedness to God. What happened to those who arrive in heaven whose souls are not properly developed? Detention class. There's a training place in heaven for those whose souls are not fully developed. But heaven is a gift based on Christ. But the development and perfection of our soul is not a gift. It is a process of a gift because it involves our response. In the end, everything is a gift. But some gifts can only be enjoyed when you have the skills. If I give you a computer and you don't know how to use it, what's that to you? You still need to learn to use a computer. If I give you a car, you don't have a license to drive, you can't enjoy it. See, there are certain gifts that you need skills. Some of you have never given cars before. I've given cars out before. Oh, give me one. We think I'm more blessed. And one time when in Malaysian church, and one of the businessmen who we know, he did a big deal multi-million dollars, and say, here's your blessing. He gave a tithe to the church, and he gave a big blessing. And look at it, then something told me, I had to, send him a message. The message was a costly message because he may have to give out all my gift. And but sometimes the message is more important than the money. And so I divided out all the gifts and I portioned it to all my associates. And so among them, some of them I give gifts. How much was it in total? 100,000. And so in those, of course here you can't even buy. Here you can buy maybe one car. In Malaysia, 100,000 can buy a lot of cars. And so divided it up, and I give some and I said, here, buy yourself a car, and you do what you want with it. And I divided it among my close circles, inner circle team, and so for a car. And because now everybody wants to be inner circle. But anyway, by the way, if that's your motive, it shall be discovered. And anyway, we're talking about the perfecting of the soul and how much it needs. And of course, when I told the business what I did with the thing, he said, no, it's for you. And I said, yes, thank you. It's my right, so I can do what I want with it. And but it was a message that I wanted him to know that because he was supposed to come into one of the inner circle groups dealing with business people. I want him to know that whatever he gives cannot influence me. That my decision, I will not profit from a relationship with him. And it was part of the thing that's for him. And so sometimes God asks you to do things very interesting, right? And don't forget this, I might as well throw out the other text. When God tested Abraham, God was the one who gave him Isaac. The test is found in Genesis 22. That's another test of humility too. To see, between you and God, to see whether you're now thinking you're bigger than God, greater than God, and God is at your bidding because God has answered so many prayers. Then God give you Genesis 22 tests. The test of sacrifice. Sacrifice the thing that is most dearest and precious to you. You know, for Abraham, you know what is most precious? Isaac. I'm sure he doesn't mind giving away half his wealth or 90% of his wealth, but don't give up Isaac. God knows how to dig into your heart. That test is also difficult to pass. But God will test each one of us. And guess what? And I say this with some sadness, some of us might not pass all the tests. And you are rewarded because you passed some of the tests. And you thought that those tests you passed were the only tests. Sorry, there could have been some tests you missed. That's why you didn't receive the other things. And so the next time you wrote down your prayers, put it in the prayer box. Remember, behind every answer is a test. Your prayer request box very full. No wonder your life was very miserable. Just teasing. And the things you demand were very great. No wonder you're going through great suffering. And he said, why did God take so long? It took you very long. Still in detention class couldn't pass a test. So remember, of course, I hope I don't discourage you from asking for great things. Because not everybody knows to ask. You're encouraged to ask. And well, we finished reading Proverbs. And then I never could get to the sermon. All this is still the desserts. What would you call the thing? The dessert is at the end. Appetizer. Yes, you call it an appetizer. Okay, these are appetizers given free of charge. In verse 2, but it says in verse 1, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. So, in verse 2, all the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. That was, this chapter 16 is what I call the humility chapter. You want to be humble, read more of this. You read every verse, meditate, you will be humble. Because you reach verse 2 already, say, wow, in my own sight I'm always better, always pure. But it's only the Lord who can see things as it is. We always think better of ourselves than what we really are. If all of us could see ourselves the way God sees us, tell you, we will cry out like what Job cried, or what some others in the prophets cry, I'm a worm. You realize how great God is in holiness and righteousness. And verse 3, commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. It's a powerful thing. The Lord has made all for himself. Yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. So don't covet anything that belongs to the wicked. Whether it be fame, finances, prosperity, influence, or anything. Because God is just and all will be judged. Verse 5. And this one I want to emphasize. It has to do with humility. Opposite of it. Everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. I want to emphasize here. If there is any pride in our life, even a little bit, you stink in the sight of God. I remember in the 7 thunder prophecies how Pastor David felt sin was stink, a stench. Of all the sins, there are some sins unto death, some sins not unto death. Of all the sins, the greatest sin is pride. The sin of pride is greater than the sin of adultery, than the sin of murder. The sin of pride. It's pride that caused Satan's fall. It's pride that God, the only sin that he says God directly resists. He resists the proud and exalts the humble. You know why now he resists the proud? It is the highest, the greatest thing of all sin. The Pharisees, their greatest sin, although the Bible says in Gospel Luke they were covetous of money, they love money, they love position. It's very obvious from Matthew 23. They love money, they love position, they love to be recognized, they love all those things. But behind it all is pride. Pride. And they were the only group that Jesus pronounced a war. Now, he did pronounce war on those who reject him in Jerusalem, cities. I'm talking about humans. They were the humans Jesus pronounced a war upon. Because this sin is an abomination. So the next time we have any pride in our life, remember, quickly get rid of it. As fast as you get rid of your feces. Anyone go to the toilet and don't flush the toilet? It's horrible, right? Have you gone to a toilet that's not flushed? Or anyone who have done their bodily functions and feces? Do you wrap it up in a tissue? Carry around? Do you take some, rub it on your clothes? Say, it looks good. Now that's the one mark none of us want. Stings! But that is what pride is like. Carrying pride around is like carrying our feces around. Stinks. This end all desire for pride. And so, you will ask a question, how then can I be holy? Wait, this one till appetizer. Let's finish. There's so many appetizers. Everyone proud in the heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though they join forces or they join hand in hand, and the proud can try to join hand in hand, none will go unpunished because God resists the proud. In mercy and truth, atonement is provided for iniquity, and by the fear of the Lord, one departs from evil. The only people who can fear the Lord are those who are humble and contrite spirit. You know why? Why they obey God easily? Because God never punished. God just spoke, only they tremble at His word. Obeying God becomes easy. You fear the word, you fear the Lord. When a man's ways, and this is a good one, when a man's ways please the Lord, He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Because the only enemy that will never be at peace with you is the devil and those directly under the devil's control. But you know how humans, there sometimes are human enemies, and enemies that come because of misunderstanding, enemies that come because you do things differently, and all the people on small tiny things become enemies. Those are the enemies they talk about. In the end, you will have peace. Except for Satan and his cohorts and those directly under his influence. Verse 8. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. So the next time you get a promotion, you're going to work in a company with super duper bonuses, but the whole thing is based on illegality and injustice. Say no. Better to be a humble little job that has righteousness and does not compromise your conscience, then to have a job that every day tears at your conscience. Better to have a humble tiny little business which you could hardly afford, you own rental and you work from home, than to own an entire complex. But the whole thing is filled with things that violate the conscience and the laws of God. Learn to be humble. To humble, the Lord are pleased. Verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Divination is on the lips of the king, his mouth must not transgress in judgment. That one is the more authority you have, the more kingly authority you exercise in your domain, the more you must watch what you say, and of course also what you do, because it has a greater impact. Honor's weights and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the back are His word. See, the Lord loves humility and honesty. One of the things I appreciate